like when a lawyer or professional produces a star document, and the person uses it and doesn't want to pay for it.
Well, did he commission it? I mean, intellectual property that he commissioned,
right?
and he contracted for, he's obligated to pay for.
Okay, is that the same as stealing? Are we talking about the same?
It would seem that it would seem that way. It would seem that way, that if you steal someone's intellectual property, I mean, we talked a little bit about intellectual property in the last chapter. At the end of the last chapter, we talked about how stealing intellectual property is still stealing.
Okay, but you can't return it. A document that a legal document that a person uses to get a bank loan, for instance, and it's used, and he doesn't pay for it. He can't return the object. It's only a piece of paper.
Yeah, but that's true. But you have to pay for it if you commissioned it. Okay. You signed a contract. You owe it. It's like a debt that you have to a person.
Right.
Right.
And if a person, if the customer has someone to collateralize, in other words, guarantee the payment, then the customer would be indebted to the guarantor, and it would be the same type of theft.
Yeah, I mean, presumably so. Any type of guarantor on payment is there because the person providing the services or the goods doesn't fully trust the person who commissioned him, so he gets a guarantor. So if the person who commissioned him cannot pay, that's what a guarantor is for, to give him the right to go to that guarantor for payment in the event that the commissioner defaults on his commitment. It seems pretty clear cut. No?
Yeah. It was just that yesterday we were talking about returning an object, and here we don't have an object. The intrinsic value is just a piece of paper.
Right. And remember, we're just at the beginning of the laws of Geneva, so I suspect we'll probably see other examples. This laws of Geneva go on for several pages. Let's see, how many seifim are we? And Simon, yeah, it's 34 seifim. We're only on seif vav now, so give us some time.
Okay, thank you very much, Rabbi.
Maybe we'll surprise you about stolen services as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I hope everyone can see my screen. We started this likutim in Sifkat and Yud yesterday. We were talking about takanas hashavim, which is a special accommodation that the rabbis made to make it easier for someone to make restitution for having stolen. The classic example that the rabbis give is that even though when the object that you've stolen has not altered in its size and its shape and its quality, you have to return the original item. Nevertheless, there's a special accommodation if you've stolen a very valuable beam and you then put it in your construction project, and it would create a huge expense to dismantle the structure that you've built in order to give him back the beam, which is completely intact. It's the same as when you stole it, right? But the Chazal made a special accommodation that you don't have to dismantle your house in order to give him back the beam. So he says, "Chachamim tiknu mipnei takanas hashavim sheyihiyeh notenet dameha v'lo yitzarech laharos habinyan." The rabbis made a special accommodation that you can just pay him the value of the beam and you don't have to dismantle your house. V'im gazal korah v'asa mizeh sukkah. Now, what if you steal a beam and you make a sukkah out of it? Uba bal hakora v'tova b'toch hachag. And the owner of the beam says, "Hey, you stole my lumber. I don't care that you built a sukkah. I want my lumber back." So he says, I don't care if it's Chol HaMoed. I want you to take down your sukkah and give me what you stole. So, or, uh, the guys make a lot of money on the schach. What happens if a guy goes over to they set up these temporary shops. I remember going to the No Frills parking lot and buying a schach mat. What if a guy says, hey, you just picked up a mat when I wasn't looking and you put it in your car and you drove off. Now I found you. I want my schach back. And there it is right there on the ceiling of the sukkah in the middle of Chol HaMoed. So no sein lo es dameha. So here too, we make an accommodation that all we require is the guy to pay cash. After hasukkah hu binyan arai, he says, because even though a sukkah is a temporary structure, so what's the big deal in dismantling it? You're going to have to dismantle it anyway. Mikol makom hamitzvah kova akol zayin yemei hachag la'asosa kibinyan kavua. Because the fact that it's in the middle of the chag, during sukkahs, it's a permanent structure. The moment sukkahs is over, it's meant to be dismantled. But right now, in this moment, it's considered to be like in any other structure, which would cause a loss for him to have to dismantle it. Abal achar hachag, hol velo nishtana velo bina'a betit, tzorich lahachzer et hakora atzma. But after the holiday is over, if the guy's willing to wait, then you have to return the original object if that's what he wants. And you can't say, I'll just pay you for it. Now, okay, so we've seen here the law about stealing chattel, stealing a beam, stealing something of value. Sometimes we make an accommodation that you can just pay him cash if you've invested so heavily into it that it would create significant financial loss for you if we obligated you to give him back the original object. Now, the imgazal karka ubana aleha binyanim. Let's say a person steals real estate and he puts up, he does construction on the stolen real estate. Afiluhim gedolim tzarich listor hakolu lahashiv hakarka leba'alim. So real estate is different from chattel. You steal real estate, it doesn't matter how much you've invested in the real estate, how much you've built on the real estate. You have to dismantle everything that you've built. Can you imagine a guy steals a piece of real estate in downtown Toronto on Bloor Street? He puts up a skyscraper. All of a sudden, they discover that it was First Nations Metis land, and the Metis come along and they say, "We want our land back. Here's our original contract." I could never understand. I still don't understand. A lot of people, when they gather in public places, they say, I just want you to all know that we are convening here on Metis land. So when I hear that, my first reaction is, well, then just give it back. Why are you making that statement that this is Metis land? So what are you implying? That this is stolen property? So give it back if it's Metis land. And if it's not Metis land, because it was originally theirs and it was appropriated, but at some point the law allows for compensation to the Metis for their property, and then we all move on. So then, I guess the sentiment I understand. The sentiment is that you want to acknowledge that we still have tshuva to do for having forcefully taken Metis land from them in this part of the world. But I guess anyway. So the point is that if you steal real estate, no matter how much time has elapsed and no matter how much you've built on that property, you have to return the original land, and you can't say, I'll just pay you for it. Delo asu takanas hashavim bekarka, because this law of takanas hashavim only applies to stolen chattel. It does not apply to stolen real estate. V'im lo na'aseh hadavar mida'ato, rak habanoim gazlu ubanu al chelik mikarka sheshayach lechavero. But let's say you were not aware that the property was stolen. But let's say a contractor comes, right? So let's say I go to a contractor who is building me a custom home somewhere out in Barrie or somewhat, where they're putting up a new I don't know where they building new developments, these new track homes. And so I go over to a contractor who's building a whole track of homes, and I pay him for the home that I'm building. And then all of a sudden it's revealed to me that that he stole the property. The property is not legally his. So nechleku haposkim yasu bazet hakanas hashavim. See, here there's a machlokus in the poskim whether, because even though I've stolen the land technically because I'm the one who commissioned the home to be built on that property, but I thought that the property was free and clear. And I didn't realize that the builder never got authorization and permission to build on that property. So there's a machlokus in the poskim whether I have to return the land or not in that case, or since I've invested so much in that structure that's on the property that I wasn't even aware was stolen, am I obligated to return the original real estate, or did the Chachamim make an accommodation in that case or not? So it's a machlokus in the poskim. It could be that the law of the land, the Dina de Malchusa in Canada, is that if they're stolen midas property, as long as we give restitution to the midas people, then we're free and clear. You see that there's a certain gray area here, whether monetary restitution on stolen real estate, when it is unbeknownst to the descendants of the people who originally stole it, will you make a takanas hashavim for those who have built real estate on it or not? So that would be applicable to any situation where, the property that you build on today you discover it to be stolen, years and years later.
Rabbi, one of the things that comes up sometimes, and there's actually, you can hear commercials about this, of companies that do this as one of their features is of measuring people's property. So sometimes people will build a fence around their property, but the fence has gone in a few feet into their neighbor's property, and then suddenly the neighbor discovers that this land is my land a little bit here. I think we have a law here, if the fence has been up for a certain amount of time, that they go with that they don't make the guy take the fence down. I'm not sure about that, but that's something that comes up sometimes.
Yes, there's a whole tractate, Bava Batra, which deals with the laws of real estate and encroachment. And we have the concept too also that if a person has been squatting on a piece of property for 3 years or more, and the owner does not protest, then that represents there is a statute of limitations on stolen property. If there's the ability for the owner to protest and he doesn't protest, the issue becomes, what if the owner was in another part of the world? Or what if the owner of the property was imprisoned and was not able to? So then that becomes an issue. So you're absolutely right. With real estate, there does come a point where there's an expiration date or a statute of limitations. Okay. The next thing that we saw is va'afilu im kfar nisyashu haba'olim, that even if the owner has already given up hope, you still have to return the original object. Umikol makom im nishbach hagezela biat hagazlan kana oso. There is an exception to this rule, where if the stolen object has appreciated significantly in value, then we allow the gazlan to keep it, meaning not that we allow him to keep it, but we allow him to charge for the appreciation. So that when he returns the stolen object, you evaluate the amount of appreciation, and the owner would be obligated to pay. Now, it's not clear to me. I think from the I think that it's it's not the poskim disagree whether this is only if the owner has already given up hope and then it appreciates after he had yeush, or if this applies even before he gave up hope. So but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure why that should be. I'm not really sure why it should be that if an object appreciates in value, I think that it's only if the appreciation was done through changing the object in some way. Let me just see, where is this halacha? This halacha is in Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Samech Beis, Sif Aleph. Just give me 1 second. Let me just take a quick look. Shin Samech Beis. Oh yeah, okay. So I'll just share the screen with you. What he's quoting from is the Shulchan Aruch over here. If a stolen object has not changed at all, but it's in its original state, even if the owners have given up hope of ever retrieving it, and even though the gazlan has already passed away, and his heirs now are in the possession of the stolen object, you always have to return the original object to the owner. If, however, it has changed in the hands of the gazlan, meaning that if it underwent some kind of physical change, and the owner has not, even though the owner has not given up hope, but the physical change that you've made in the object causes the gazlan to acquire it, but he has to pay back therefore cash and not the original object. So what was the Imrei Yaakov saying? The Imrei Yaakov quotes this, Shin Samech Beis, Seif Aleph. I think he's quoting, this is a I think there's a, okay, he meant to quote Sif Beis. If you look at Sif Beis, Nisyashu haba'olam mimena v'lo nishtanet. If, let's say, the owners gave up hope, but the object is still intact, Kana hagazlan kol hashevach shehishbiach achar hayesh. The gazlan has acquired or has a right to any appreciation that occurred after the owner gave up hope of retrieval. Ve'eno mishalem ela kishat hagazela, and therefore only has to pay back the value of the object, what it was worth at the time of the theft. The davar zemidivrei mipnei takanas hashavim. But this is also a rabbinic accommodation to allow a person to do tshuva and return the stolen goods. And when therefore, okay, so this is what it means. What it means is that if I steal something from a guy, I steal a certificate of a Bitcoin certificate from him. I don't know. How does Bitcoin work? Do they have certificates? Not really. What if I steal a collectible item, like a valuable stamp or a valuable coin or a valuable comic book, okay? And it appreciates in value while it's in my possession, after I've stolen it, okay? Because it becomes a very rare collectible. So a few years go by and it now is worth twice as much as it was when I had originally stolen it. But it's completely intact. It's still in mint condition. So the halacha is that I have to return to him the original object. But I do have a right to charge him the difference in appreciation, that it's appreciated while it was in my possession. And that's a bit of a surprising halacha. So the question is, why did the rabbis do this? They did it because of takanas hashavim. They did it because they wanted to accommodate a person who would otherwise have a very difficult time returning stolen goods. It doesn't seem to be fair, though. It doesn't seem to be fair that if he stole something and kept it for a time and appreciated in value in his possession, that he should be the one to make the profit off of it. So I think there has to be some kind of qualification to this. Let me just see here. This doesn't seem right to me. It's a very strange halacha. Let's see if there's any cross references. I want to research this a little bit more and get back to you on this halacha. Give me a little time on this one. I want to figure out when this applies and when this doesn't apply, because it strikes me as a bit bizarre, this halacha. Okay. Okay, let's go back to what we were studying. Okay, we'll do the next item in the Likutim, the Sifkat and Yud Beis. Nisyashu haba'alim, if the owner gives up hope of ever retrieving it, you still have to return the original object, unless it switched hands. If it switched hands because the Gazlan, after the owner had given up hope, then sold it, so then the person who now is the new owner, once it's discovered it's stolen, only restitution has to be made, but you don't have to give back the original object. So the Likutim qualifies this, and he says, "Ein nikra shinui rishus ela b'mochero nosein, aval imeis v'horishu levanov lo." He says that's only if the Gazlan sold it or gifted it to a third party. But if the Gazlan died and his heirs inherited it, they would still have to return the original object that was stolen. Why? The rishus yorish lav ki rishus lokech dami debra kara de avuhahu, because an heir is considered to be an extension of the decedent, and it's not like a third party. An heir really takes the place of the decedent, and therefore it's still considered to be within the original estate of the Gazlan. And therefore, if the Gazlan steals something and dies and his kids inherited it, and then they discover that this very valuable piece of artwork was stolen, they have to return it. So a lot of discussion today in stolen artwork from the Holocaust, right? I was just reading an article about a stolen bust from a bronze bust from the Middle Ages, from Africa, that was discovered, that was stolen from someone during the Holocaust, and a whole story. And there's a lot of there's a famous story. They made a movie out of it, I think. Was it called The Woman in Gold or something? I forget the name of the film. About what's that?
Yeah, that is it. Yeah, it was Gustav Klimt painting. Yeah,
a famous piece, a famous painting. That just because the people who stole it died, does not. The question is, do they have to make restitution? Do they have to give back the original artwork? Would the fact that the Nazis who stole it died, but it was really stolen by the government, I guess, at the time, and now it's a new government. Does the new government, is it considered to be a third party, and therefore they don't have to make restitution, or was it just passed down? It becomes murky. But it becomes a moral issue as well because of the exploitation of the property of Holocaust victims, that it became such an important issue. Okay, let's see. And then finally, Oshani Shtanit, if it changes in its original physical state, so then the Goslin pays cash, he does not give back the original object. So those of you who studied Maseches Sukkah remember that a lulav hanigzal, or lulav hagazal, a stolen lulav, you can't be yotzei the mitzvah, right? So what would be the halacha, and why is it? Because it's considered to be it's not considered to be in your possession. It doesn't have the required measurements because it's considered to be completely forbidden, and therefore you can't fulfill the mitzvah with it. What would happen, however, if you made a physical change to the lulav? Would you then acquire it and then be able to fulfill the mitzvah with it? That's the question. Gazal lulav vishipehu. Let's say you did something to, let's say the lulav had some bumps on it, and you sanded down the bumps. So you've now changed the physical state of the lulav. So the halacha is that the lulav is kosher. The kanye bishinui maisa. Then the lulav you can fulfill the mitzvah with, because you've acquired the lulav for yourself, and now even though you have a debt that you have to pay to the person that you stole the lulav from, the lulav is yours. Umihu lo yivarech alav kevin shemitchila begezel balayado machmirina le'inyan bracha de'ispei haskar shem shamayim. But here's the catch. There's only one thing that you're not allowed to do. You can fulfill the mitzvah, but we don't permit you to make the bracha. Why don't we permit you to make the bracha? Because God does not want his name associated with stolen property. The Gemara talks about if you steal some bread from someone, and you make a bracha on it, what is God's attitude? So the Gemara says, Ein ze mevarech ela minaitz. That person is not blessing God, but that person is cursing God. Because if you steal in order to be able to make a bracha, in order to fulfill a mitzvah, that's abominable. That's despicable to God. The das hamagin Avram, the dafka below yeyush. Avalim haya yeyush im shinoi maisa o im shinoi rishus mut levarich gamke. The Magen Avram says that's only if the original owner did not give up hope. But let's say the original owner, the guy who's selling lulavim, gave up hope of ever retrieving that lulav. So, or the person who owned the lulav. Excuse me. So he says that if the owner gave up hope, and you couple that with the additional factor that there was a change in the physical state of the object, or that he gave it to a third party, then the third party or the changed lulav you could now make a bracha on. Aval das hataz v'hagra de b'chol gavnei lu yuchal levarich. But the Taz and the Gra disagree with the Magen Avram, and they say that once you've ascertained that this lulav was acquired through ill-gotten gains, or through theft, you can never make a bracha on it. Okay. There's one other piece that I want us to see, but it's the biurim on this, and so that we'll probably do in Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow, because we're just at the top of the hour. So we're going to talk a little bit more about when you steal property or you take property that's not yours and you do improvements to it, who's obligated to pay and who's not obligated to pay. I go ahead, let's say, and I make improvements to a property of yours. Can I charge you then for it? So we're going to talk about that in Yirtzeh Hashem in the Biurim tomorrow. Okay? So I think we'll hold it for today. And we'll continue tomorrow. I just want to let you know that the plan is that we'll learn all of next week except for Friday. Okay? We'll continue having shir as long as you're all amenable to it. And then we're going to take a break over Pesach. And I may be going out of town right after Pesach. And if I do, so then we'll take a break after Pesach as well, and I'll keep you informed. Okay, everyone?